Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 658. Today we're going to be talking about a game called Jaws. Now if this box art looks familiar, it's because it's based on the 1970s movie by Steven Spielberg with Richard Dreyfuss and Robert Schaub. And one of the players is going to be playing Jaws, and either 1 to 3 other players will be fighting against Jaws as Hooper and Brody and Quint. And the game takes place in 2 acts. So you have kind of a Scotland Yard Fury of Dracula section of the game, and then you actually flip the board over and then play, I don't know how to really describe succinctly the other side of the game, but it's a sort of combat game with the players playing the characters on a boat fighting Jaws. So it's a 2-act game, and it really follows the kind of the narrative of the movie. The shark is swimming around, starting to eat swimmers, and then it gets more and more tense, and then you finally flip the board and you have a 2nd act, and you have that kind of final grand finale battle on the orca boat that slowly is getting destroyed by the shark. So the game very much mimics that narrative. So let's go ahead and jump into how the game works, and I'll come back and tell you what I think. Okay, so here I've got Act 1 set up. When Act 1 finishes, we're going to flip over this main game board to the other side and then play the other side of it. So they're very 2 distinct games, really. And so like I said in the intro, this side of the board is very much like Scotland Yard or Fury of Dracula. You're going to be trying to just locate and pin down where the shark is at before he eats too many swimmers. Now you've got the different characters here in their starting positions. Again, you can play this 2 to 4 players. You can have 3 opposing characters and 1 shark player, or 1 shark player and then another player just controlling all 3 of these by themselves. And you can see we've got different locations here on the board, and the shark themselves has a little tracker pad here where they can write down where they are as they move around in a hidden way. So actually they're going to pick and write down their start location there to start the game. Maybe he writes down 3. So the shark knows he's there, but nobody else does. And then we're going to play several turns in Act 1, and the Act 1 is going to end when either the shark eats 9 swimmers, so they've got this little tracker here, or they get tagged twice by barrels from Quint. When either of those occurs, we're going to then pause and go to Act 2, and then I'll explain a little bit about when this happens and why it's important for the shark to eat swimmers and so on. So the first thing that's going to happen every round in Act 1 is you're going to do a new Amity event. And then, so this is going to give you an idea of where swimmers are going to come out. So you can see S, S, E, and WW. So 2 swimmers are going to come out in the South Beach, 1 in the East Beach, and 2 in the West Beach. And then it's going to enable kind of a special rule for that turn. So this says Quint may take 1 extra action this round. So every turn you're going to spawn new swimmers, and then kind of have a new game-changing event that kind of helps or hinders the shark or the other players. So like we said, the card's going to dictate where swimmers come out. So if we had 2 come out here in the South Beach, you can see the S there, maybe 1 here in the East Beach, and so on. And so the shark is obviously trying to eat those swimmers. So once you've spawned the swimmers, then the shark's going to get a turn. The shark has 3 actions, and on their turn they can simply do move 1 space or eat 1 swimmer. So they're going to keep track of where they're at. And like I said, maybe we started in 3, so I could do move, move, and eat, and that would be my 3 actions. However, you don't necessarily want to be that obvious about what you do, because the shark doesn't have to tell the players what they're doing, but if they eat a swimmer, they obviously are going to eat the swimmer and tell the players where the swimmer was eaten. And so they would know, if I did this, I would say, okay, I did my turn and I ate this swimmer. And so they would know, okay, well, they're probably in this area, or they moved through here. They won't necessarily know that I stopped there, but they could think that I stopped there. The other thing that the shark has to alert the players to is if there's a barrel here floating in the water, and I'll explain how that can happen. If the shark ever moves through and touches a barrel, they have to notify the player that, hey, I triggered that barrel spot, so they know that they passed through there. So they always got to notify the swimmers they ate and barrels that they triggered. The shark also has 4 special abilities that they can use through the course of the game, and they use each of these once, and the players won't know what they're using it, but they're going to know they are using a special ability. So maybe on my turn I do my 3 actions and I say, I used that ability. They don't know what it is, but they can maybe get in a sense of what it is based on what I'm doing. That's hard to kind of explain, but let's look at one of these here. So this is, for 1 action, the shark may eat all swimmers at a beach. So I can say, okay, I did my turn and I ate maybe that swimmer on the West Beach and I used this ability. And they don't know what I did, but they know I used it. And then once I use it, that's gone. And then on a later turn, I could use like this ability here. Once this round, the shark may move up to 3 spaces with 1 move action. So instead of moving once, I can move 3 spaces, and so on. So there's different abilities here. The shark does not trigger any motion sensors. So if I swim through a barrel and I play this ability, I don't actually have to tell them that I did that. So you can kind of see where you can kind of play a little bit of mind games. And this last one I'll just show you, which won't make a lot of sense till I talk about what the other players can do. The shark is invisible to Hooper's fish finder and Brody's binoculars. So I'll explain what those abilities are. Basically what this allows to do though is the shark can lie when these players use that special ability. But again, over the course of the game as they're doing things, and whenever they play a special ability, you got to really wonder what it was. And sometimes you can use this as a bluffing mechanism. This is a really cool part of the game. So after the shark takes their turn, eats any swimmers, maybe they ate 2 swimmers, then the players can go and do their turns. And here you can see we've got 3 cards for each of the different characters in the game, Hooper, Brody, and Quint. The players can do these turns in any order they want, but once Hooper goes, Hooper does his whole turn, and then the other players can go. Now each of the players gets 4 actions, and they can do some stuff the same and some stuff not the same. So let's talk a little bit about what those actions are. Now one thing you can do is move on your turn, so you can just kind of move from space to space. Now Brody, the police officer, he can only move on land. He's afraid of the water, if you haven't seen the movie. But the other characters move on the ocean, so we can move 1 space like that for 1 action. So you can move as much as you want, but it costs you 1 action to move. Now Hooper, on the other hand, for 1 action, he can move 2 spaces. So he can get around pretty quickly in his boat. Now the other thing that a player can do is if they're in the same space as maybe some swimmers, for 1 action, they can rescue a swimmer. They just pull them off the board, we throw them back into land, and then they're no longer food or possible food for the shark. So you can move and rescue swimmers. And the main thing you're trying to do again is tag the shark with barrels. So the Quint starts the game with 2 barrels on his player board to shoot at the shark. But the rest of the game is going to be a big part of Brody moving into this main shop area, grabbing barrels for 1 action each, and then getting to one of the 2 docks. You can see there's a dock there and a dock over here. So maybe I start my turn here, I grab 2 barrels, that's 2 actions, move here, 3rd action, 4th action is I'll drop 1 of my barrels at the dock, still having 1 on my player board. And then the other players here can come and pick up. So maybe Hooper does 1 action, because remember he can move 2 spaces, and then he can pick up all the barrels at the dock for 1 action. So if I was able to stack up multiple barrels there and be a little efficient, then Hooper can grab all these barrels like that. Now Hooper is trying to get the barrels, and so is Brody, to Quint. So if Hooper or Quint are in the same spot as each other, if it's Quint's turn, he can take all the barrels from Hooper for an action, or if it's Hooper's turn, he can give all the barrels to Quint for an action. And then again, Quint once per turn can shoot a barrel. So when you shoot a barrel, you can put it in the spot that you're in or an adjacent spot next to you. If the shark is there, the shark has to say, "You got me," and then this barrel will then go on the board of the shark. And again, once you get 2 barrels on your shark person, then that is going to trigger the end of the round, in addition to 9 swimmers triggering the end of the round. But again, you can only do that once per turn. So once, if you get them on your first shot and you got a second one, you got to wait till your next turn. That gives the shark a chance to get away. But that's really what the players are trying to do, is manage these barrels and get them out there. So let's say though you shoot the barrel, there's no shark there. The barrel will land in the ocean there, and the shark will say, "Well, I'm not there." But now these barrels are floating around. And remember, when the shark moves through there, they have to tell you that they triggered it. So it's okay to kind of seed this area with lots of barrels to try to, pin the shark in and trigger him and get, try to trap him and pin him down. Now, Brody and Hooper, they have some special abilities as well. And I talked a little bit about that when I talked about the fish finder and things. So Hooper here, you can use this fish finder and you just drop that in the spot where he's at. And you can do that again once per round. And then the shark has to tell you whether he's in that space or an adjacent space, or whether he's not. So you'll have a good sense. So if you drop it here and he says, "Okay, I'm there," obviously you know where he's at, or adjacent, you can narrow it down to 4 spaces depending on where it's at. One thing to note is anything that you cross like diagonally at a corner like this, that's not adjacent. So if shark was in 4 and you dropped it in 7, he wouldn't tell you he's adjacent. Or he could be there. And then not adjacent means, he could be anywhere. So that's kind of Hooper's special thing. And then Brody here, he's got a special ability. Now, if he is at a beach, let's just move this stuff out of the way. So let's say he's at West Beach. He can put his binoculars down and use that once per turn. And then Brody can say, are you there? And the shark just tells him whether or not they're at the West Beach. But remember, the shark has an ability where he can actually lie about the fish finder answer or the binocular answer. The other thing that Brody can do is you can kind of see here, let's zoom in a tiny bit, is you see this spot here, Amity PD with the star or the mayor's office. If he's in either of those two spots, he can then place a beach closed marker on a beach that doesn't have any swimmers. Just a little strategy tip. Do this early in the game. Once the swimmers kind of start to come out, you basically won't be able to use this. So just get this out there anywhere, it doesn't matter, and then that will kind of lock out one beach. Now what happens though, is when you draw swimmers to come at east, instead of putting swimmers out, you're gonna flip this open, and then you'll say opening soon, and then once you draw cards again, then it'll remove this. So it kind of blocks down a beach there. And the other thing you can do is, let's say you did that, and then you decided you wanted to move it for some reason. So you say, okay, for my turn, I'm in one of these two spots. I'm gonna actually pick this up and move it, and then we'll put it over here and do that. So you don't have to like let it expire. You can move it around once per turn if you wish. So again, you're gonna keep playing until either the shark eats 9 people or he gets tagged twice. Now based on the number of people he ate, let's say they caught him and the shark had eaten 7 people, and then they caught him and tagged him with the second barrel. So you're gonna go to Act 2, and this is gonna tell you kind of how beefed up and powerful each side is. So the more swimmers the shark eats, the more shark ability cards they get. So they get 8. If you caught them really early, the shark may only get 4. And then you can see the crew card, the more people the shark eat, they get less cards. In this case, they're gonna get 5 crew and 8 shark abilities. So Act 1 is over. We're gonna flip the board over and go to Act 2. And we can see here a sunken boat. Wait, we gotta fix that. So here, we magically have added this boat back. So what the object of the game now is for the players to kill the shark, and for the shark to either kill the players or sink the boat. So as the boat takes damage here, you can see it starts to fall apart and then finally disappear entirely. So let's get this set up a little bit, and then we'll show you how to play Act 2. So once again, the shark is going to draw shark ability cards out of this deck. You're going to shuffle this deck up randomly, and then you're going to draw a bunch of different shark ability cards based on how well the shark did and how many swimmers they ate. So you're going to get a big hand of these cards, hopefully, if you're the shark. You're going to shuffle up these resurface cards here, which I'll explain in a minute. You're going to set them right here. We're going to deal them out alongside the bottom of the board. And then each of the other characters is going to get 2 cards that are specific to them. They always get these. Quint will get these 2 gear cards, a flare and a machete. Hooper's going to get a rifle and a hammer, and then Brody's going to get here a baseball bat and a pistol. And then based on how well or poor the other side did, you're going to shuffle up these crew cards here, deal out a certain number of these, and then you're going to decide to hand these out to the different players. And once you're handed them out to the players, you're kind of locked in. And there's a whole variety of special abilities that these cards will do. And then of course the character cards are going to get flipped over to Act 2 side. And so each of these is going to have a certain number of hit points. So you can see the shark here has about 18 hit points there. As they take damage, you're going to mark there, and there's a little kind of player aid here for the shark. And then similarly for each of the characters here, so you Quint, Act 1, these are all the actions they can do. You're going to flip that over there. Again, a little player aid on the turn structure, and then you're going to also get the little tack here for controlling their character hit points. And so once they get down here to the X, then that character is dead. They're going to lose all their items and they're out of the game, and the shark is that much closer to victory. Now you're also going to hand the players here a targeting marker in their particular color. So obviously Brody will get the black one. I'll explain what these are used for. And then the players, we're going to go ahead and put them out. They can decide where they want to kind of space out here on the boat. So they're on the boat like so. And then we're going to go ahead and just lay these tokens out here. We can see ABC for these slots here. And then we're going to walk through how a turn works in Act 2. So every turn you're going to start dealing out 3 of these resurface cards. And you can see these match A, B, and C. So we're going to mark here. So A, you can see, is this spot because it's that little corner of the boat. B is up here, and then C is over here. So these are the 3 possible spots that the shark is going to come up out of the water, and then it's going to surface possibly and then eat parts of the boat or maybe parts of the players. Now what's going to happen now is the shark has these ABC tokens. They're going to choose one of them. Let's just say we choose A. We're not going to tell the players that. And then we're going to just put that down in front of us and say, okay, that's our choice. Now you may also, if you want, choose one of the shark ability cards from your hand, put that down here, and then put that on top of it. So that means you've locked in. They know you're using some ability. They don't know what you're going to use until you reveal it. But then, the shark locks in their choice. You don't have to use the ability card. They're really good. You should use them. But also be a little bit judicious with them if you don't have that many. And then the crew is going to prepare. So what's going to happen is they're going to have these different weapons in front of them. And they're going to just sort of like advance and say, okay, I'm using the pistol, and maybe somebody else says, or I'm using the baseball bat. So they're going to lock in a weapon, and then they're going to lock in the target of where they're at. And then they can also, I should say, they can move 2 spaces. So you can go, well, yeah, 1, 2. You always move adjacent to, the different lines here. You don't move diagonal. And then so you can maybe, let's say, I'm going to move over here, and we're all going to jump up and you maybe try to target B. So you could say, oh, we're all going to move down this way and then throw our little targets at B. Or maybe you're going to spread out, like so. And then, each of the players is going to put their little targeting icons on the different spots. So we've got all our bases covered in this case. So players have moved up to 2 times, weapon chosen, target locked in. The shark will then reveal. So in this case we chose A. So we can just kind of get rid of all of these things because they're not going to be worth anything. We're going to get rid of these cards, throw them in the discard pile, so we know we're coming up in A here. So the crew get to react first. So in this case, let's say Brody there, he had the baseball bat. So he's going to get a chance to whack the shark. So the baseball bat here is you're going to roll 2 dice. If you attack misses, you can roll both dice, and then the new results are final. So you have these dice here that you can roll. So let's just roll them. So we got a really good roll there. That's 4 hits, but we can see because the shark came up in A, they get an automatic 2 defense. So we can negate 2 of that damage, and then we'll mark 2 damage here on our shark tracker, like so. So what the players do is they have to kind of look at, where they're coming up. So like, oh, the shark came up here. They only get to fight with 1 dice, but they're a little bit more protected. And there's some other things to consider as well. So once that characters or multiple characters have attacked the shark, then the shark gets to attack. And you can see, oh, I came up at A, so I got 1 die, so I get to roll that. And then what happens is you're going to look at the boat defense. So in this case, if I got at least 1 hit, then this tile is going to flip over. But if I was able to get 3 hits on it, then it would immediately sink. So in this case, though, it's just going to flip over. We'll go ahead and flip the tile over like so. And then Brody, of course, will stay in the little broken piece. And now next time I attack this, I only need 1 hit, and then this is going to go into the water. Anybody on there is going to fall into the water. And if the shark ever ends up in the same space as a player in the water, for their attack, they can, instead of attacking an adjacent boat spot, then they can attack the player directly. But either way, if at the end of all of this, at the end of the round, the shark then can get 1 free bonus attack of just 1 die to any players that are in the same water space as them. So the shark can make quick work of the players if they end up in the water. So the one thing to note here is once you're in the water like this, to move to an adjacent spot as the player, let's say you want to jump up here or here, then that's going to cost you both of your movement points to get up there. Anytime you're going from the water entering the boat, that's 2 movements. So again, you're just going to keep going again until you drop more resurface cards, and then the shark's going to surface again, the boat's going to slowly get destroyed, the players are going to start taking nicks, the shark's going to start to get a little bit wounded. The only other thing to note here is you can see this little hook icon here, like that. So if the shark resurfaces in this spot, then they're going to be able to shake off any weapons that are hook icons here. So like, let's say you would attach the flare for your attack. On a previous turn, you'd, instead of attacking with a gun or machete or something, you just hook on the flare, if obviously if you target the right spot. Now later on, if the shark surfaces, anything that has this little icon they can shake off, and then that card will get discarded. So that's another thing to kind of take into consideration when you're trying to figure out where the shark's going to come up, if they really need to get rid of that thing that's on them. And there's just a lot of really cool interactions with the cards. I'm not going to go through all that right now. I'll talk a little bit about that part in the review, but some very thematic things based on the movie and stuff. Oh, what's that? Okay, so that is Jaws. Now let's just jump into the 3 pillars of reviews. But I'm going to just kind of spoil it right away. I really, really enjoy this game. I've had a chance to play it at the different player counts, 2, 3, and 4. As far as player counts, like which is better, I don't really know. I think they're all the same. It was fine with 2 players. It was fine with 4 players. It was fine with 3 players. You know, it's because, you know, the person that is playing the shark is playing the shark, and either 1, 2, or 3 other players are playing the different characters in the movie. So there's obviously a lot more discussion and things happening, which I think makes the shark sweat a little bit more as players discuss things. You know, if you've got 3 players, where if it's just 1 other player, it's still very interesting because it's like a very head-to-head, thinky kind of thing, and you know, you can kind of get into a little bit more banter back and forth, direct banter, and you know, the shark can kind of talk some smack and back and forth. So that's kind of an interesting kind of social dynamic, but they're all really, really fun. Now, in terms of the play time, it's about an hour. I'm not sure what the box says on it, but it's usually about an hour to play the game. It's pretty quick. You can have, you know, I guess quicker, you know, Act 1 versus Act 2. Act 2 seems to kind of play out the same. But even Act 1, it's within the ballpark of 5 or 10 minute difference in the 3 games that I've played with it. So it's, you know, you're ballparking about an hour. It kind of depends how much the players want to discuss and hem and haw and, you know, kind of get into the theme of the thing and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, if you're playing real stodgily and you just kind of like do you know, kind of like wooden posts, then maybe it would go a lot quicker. But if you get really into the theme and acting it out and things like that and just kind of talking smack, you know, you can go to an hour or so. As far as like what is the game like, well, obviously Act 1 is a lot like Scotland Yard or Fury of Dracula or something, with hidden movement game, trying to sneak around and stuff like that. The players are playing a little bit of a pandemic style game where they're trying to get rid of the swimmers and, you know, trying to deal with that and kind of throwing barrels out to sort of you know, protect the swimmers or just, you know, act as signals in other parts of the board. So it's a very interesting dynamic there with the barrel dropping because, you know, you could put them around swimmers. You could try to just get a bunch of barrels out and focus on that, let the shark eat a bunch of swimmers. I don't know, there's a real kind of economy involved with, you know, of actions trying to get the more barrels out, just out in the ocean, and hope to get lucky and hit the shark a couple times. So that's an interesting part of it. And then you've got the whole like closing the beach and using the fish finder and that kind of thing. So it's a very solid, interesting hidden movement game on that side. And obviously it's like a little bit on the lighter end. The game itself is a little bit on the lighter end. But there's still a really good, you know, amount to kind of chew on and stuff like that. Yeah, no pun intended there. With the you know, with the hidden movement. And then you flip it over to Act 2, and I'm not really sure what game is like that. It's hard to say because it's sort of like a guessing game in a way, but because, you know, the shark comes up in A, B, or C. Well, there's crew cards and things like that. Like there's chum. You can play a chum card, and then you seat it in there so the shark can reveal one of his 2 choices that he didn't pick. So now instead of 3 spots, you've narrowed down to 2 spots, and you play that before the characters even pick anything. So there's a lot of interactions with all the different cards. You can attach the flares, you can get the gas canister or whatever on there and shoot it with the rifle, and the weapons have different abilities and things like that, and so they allow you to re-roll or like lower the shark's defenses, and there's a shark cage, and there's all kinds of cool stuff in there. So yeah, it's just kind of like whack-a-mole ABC, but then, you know, as you kind of do stuff, there's some little bit of push your luck and stuff. So as the boat kind of gets reduced down, you know, you can kind of tell, well, the shark's probably going to go over here because if you know, they can destroy this part of the boat, then they're really close to winning. So there's some other metagaming going on besides just the ABC part of it with that side of it. But I don't really know what to compare that to. I always try to compare like this to other games. The B side of this is not, I don't really know. It's kind of its own thing. Now I will say the Act 1 and the Act 2 side, the A and B side, they are, the whole game is super thematic, and like I love the Jaws movie. I mean, I know most people I think do. It's like one of the classic movies of cinema and all that stuff. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't like Jaws, but you know, I think it's a fairly universally loved movie. It's crazy, you know, the killer shark, and it's one of the first summer blockbuster movies and all that stuff. So if you like the movie, you know, I don't think you have to be a Jaws super fan or anything, but if you just like enjoy Jaws and like if it comes on TV, you like watching it, this is like 1,000% a must-get game. even if you just like appreciate the Jaws movie, I think just because this game fits the theme of the movie and fits the whole narrative and the story and the arc, there's a lot of like Easter eggs in the game for the movie. Like just simple stuff, like the fact that like Brody never gets in the water. Well, he couldn't swim. He was afraid of water. Which is weird because he's a sheriff on an island. Like, he can't swim, is afraid of water, and he's responsible for all the safety of all the beachgoers. Super funny. But like things like that, and then just the way that like the different characters, what their roles are, the different equipment and stuff in the game, in the overall course of the game. So, the shark starts eating swimmers, like it kind of slowly, like, oh, that's weird, that swimmer died. If you remember the movie, it's like, whoa, what killed this swimmer? That's crazy. And then, more and more swimmers are getting eaten, and it gets crazy. And then, the fishing fleets gets out, so you start to get the barrels all out there. And so this is the natural arc of the game. And then that final epic battle in the finale, with the boat is really cool. And the way that the two things kind of tie into each other is really neat. Because I've seen, one of the games we played, it was the 4-player game. The shark got all 9 swimmers. I think we got 1 barrel on the shark. I think we did. Yeah, we got 1 barrel on the shark. I wasn't playing the shark in that particular game. 9 swimmers. And then we're like, whew, man, we got smoked so hard because it just took us forever to get the 1 barrel on there. And the shark got all these abilities, and we had like, not that many crew card. And then we got the shark within like 2 hit points or 1 hit point of death before he destroyed the whole boat. And then I played another game of it, 3-player, and I was playing the shark in this particular game. And then, so I think I got up to 7 swimmers, which was still really good for the shark. And then flipped it over, and the shark literally was like a 1-turn thing, and it was like a 50 shot of, okay, if you kill the shark's going to die. And the shark did die in that case. But then the shark could have eaten the last 2 spaces of the boat because they had a special ability card that I was saving. And it was like, oh man, I just had to like, you kind of go for it there. And so it was just a shot right at the end. It was very exciting, intense. And all 3 games that I've played at this, at all the different player counts, have been that way, where it's just like, man, you're like, oh man, this is not balanced, the one side's stronger than the other. But then by the end of the game, all 3 games have been really tense and right down to the wire there. So that's just the way that first act narrative and game mechanic stuff, sucks into the second side of it. It's just it's like a very kind of like an epic experience of just a lot of drama happening. And you can have kind of things go either way for either side, but then it can kind of turn around and stuff like that. So it's just packed into this hour is this really just meaty, no pun intended, juicy experience. It's really cool, and again, it fits the narrative of the movie and everything like that. So if you're like our Jaws fan, again, and you're enough of a fan that you will pick up on the little Easter eggs in the movie, this is like 1,000% got to be in your collection, because I think you're gonna have a blast. You'd be like, oh, remember that? Oh, that's funny how this works, because it's kind of like that in the movie. And then if you're just like, let's say you're not a Jaws fan or you don't really care, I still would recommend this game, because it's just an interesting sort of narrative flow to it. But there's something in the back of my head that says like, well, if you think Jaws is dumb or something, or you're just not enticed by the theme at all, then I would say you probably don't avoid the game. Because, for me, as somebody that enjoys Jaws, I'm not like super fan of Jaws, but I think it's an excellent movie. It's a classic, one of the best movies of all time, the way it's made or everything. It's not like definitely one of my favorite movies. It's not like if you listed my top 10 movies or top 50, I mean, Jaws might show up, but I don't really think about movies that way too much. But it's not like something I'm like, oh yeah, Jaws, But I'm like, Jaws is an awesome, well-made movie, and just everything is great. The way that this game translates that cinema, it gets me more excited. Like, I want to go watch Jaws again because of the game, and the game did such a good job, like nailing Jaws, that I'm like, yeah, that movie's great. Just because of the game. And the game is great. This is a fantastic game. I mean, just to see, like, just from almost like a, I don't know. I don't want to have like a Poindexter attitude about games so much, but just to see the translation of the medium, it's like cinema to game, and the game just knocked it out of the park. So a lot of times, like Jaws was originally a book, Okay, I don't know anything about the book, but the movie's great, and so somebody made a movie out of the book. And this is going to come off a little basic, but I was like, okay, good, and they did a good job or whatever. Now, a lot of times when you see games made out of like IP, like Star Wars Rebellion or War of the Ring or Dune and stuff, they do a really good job. And and that sometimes they do a game based on IP, and it's just like they cashed in the IP maybe or whatever. The game wasn't good. This is one of those moments, I think, for me, because it's such an accessible game to a degree, where like Star Wars Rebellion and War of the Ring and Dune is not something you could really break out with a family. I think this is like a really, really amazing like achievement of game. Like, I'm really blown away by this game. Now, actually, just the last thought I want to kind of leave you with here. If you're like, well, would I take and play this with a family? I took it and played with my family. And I played with a game group too. And so I've had a good time across the board there. And, I actually got into a little bit of an argument sort of with some friends of mine online, as well as some of my friends in the game group. And I was like, this is perfect. I was like, well, it's too complicated for a family game. If you just showed up and you picked this off the shelf at Target, because this is a Target exclusive for right now, and then it's just too much going on. It's about 12 pages of rules. And I actually disagree. I think, okay, so I guess, like, what family, though, are we talking about? Are we talking about playing with 5-year-olds and, like, you buy the game and give it to your 8-year-old and say, teach this to Frankie and the kids? Well, yeah, sure. But I think any parent or adult could walk through this and play it. And here's the kicker, is there is a code on here, a URL you can go to, and you can go watch the How to Play review by Geek Sundry, who they were obviously hired to make that walkthrough and playthrough. Like, that counts. Like, that's part of what you're buying when you're buying the game. It's right here in big bold things. It's like, stop, watch How to Play video, and the video was like 7 or 8 minutes long, I think, or 6 or 7 minutes. And that's how I learned how to play the game. I was like, oh, there's a video? Oh, it's Geek Sundry video. They do like, it's like a watch and played style video. I watch and I'm like, cool, know how to play the game now. And then I read the rules through. I'm like, okay, yeah. But if you're a family, you can go and watch that video if you're not into like reading rules. Like, that's a valid thing. Like, it's 2019. It doesn't always have to be a rule book. The rule book's there. It's a good reference, so you know what's going on. Like, you just want a quick, easy reference when you're at the table. But as far as like the accessibility gateway for something, let me get a little crazy. Dude, watch the video. It's fine. It's right there. You can't just say nobody's going to watch a video. Friggin' everybody watches YouTube videos. Like, that's part of the game. So anyway, I'm just making my point. Nobody's here to argue with me except this camera. But 100%, this is accessible. Gateway game, family game type of thing. It's just an awesome game. Like, this is one of the best games of the year. It's got the Jaws thing. It translates the movie awesome. You can go pick this up for your family, watch the video. You'll be in and playing. Like, it's very accessible. You can watch this video. Send them to my video. It's not as exhaustive as the Geek and Sundry one. But anyway, I just want people to get out there and play this one, because to me, this is a big deal, I think, for board games and stuff like that. And hopefully it moves beyond a Target exclusive at some point, so it becomes more readily accessible for folks not around a Target or in other countries and things like that. But excellent game, lots of fun, tense, non-stop, start to finish. Okay, there's Jaws. Thanks.